Good morning and welcome to Empowering Solutions for Energy Measures webinar. We will wait a few more minutes before we start. It's now 10 o'clock. Once again, a very warm welcome to today's webinar on Solutions for Energy Measures organized by the Empowering Project. Today's agenda, the aim with today's webinar is to touch upon how Covenant of Mayors signatories can use energy measures such as energy efficiency, renewable energy, mobility, and innovative financial solutions as powerful tools within their action plans. And also the webinar will give you some ideas on how to identify targets and actions for your SECAPs. Today's agenda, we will first hear a bit about reduce energy use in buildings and reduce energy use through behavioral changes by Lisa Osman from RISE. After that, we will hear something about renewable energy technologies in municipalities by Dr. Konstantinos Karitsas from CRES. After that, we will hear about a grassroots initiative about mobile car sharing by Peppe Clausen. And finally, we will have and hear Jessica Vadin talk about innovative financial solutions and PV. So let's start. Lisa, welcome to start your presentation.
Thank you very much. Do you also see this window now, right?
We see your presentation.
Only the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, wait, I'll just... Okay, so thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you a bit. My name is Lisa Osman and I'm a head of group at RISE, Built Environment, and the unit is called Energy and Circular Economy. And I work mainly with energy efficiency in buildings, also a bit with solar energy, and also a little bit about human behavior connected to energy issues and buildings. There. I would like to start with a few global challenges for the built environment. As you all know, energy is one of the biggest challenges I see it for built environment, but there's also quite a few others that we need to address. We have the use of resources, the environmental impact, and the use of different rare materials, minerals, and resources that are not renewable. We have the climate change issue that affects different parts of the world differently. In Sweden, we are not very much affected as it is right now, and not in a negative way at least. We've had summer all May, which is really uncommon for us, and that might be a part of it, but in other parts of the world, of course, there you can already see big problems due to the climate change. We have the urbanization, where more and more people move to the cities. This gives a good ground for doing effective measures on transport and living, but it also creates issues with integration problems and also with waste and energy supply to all of these people. We have the globalization, where people are being more and more willing to move around in different parts of the world, which is you can see it in both ways. It's both a positive thing that this is happening, but it is a challenge. We have the digitalization, which I would say for the built environment is mostly a positive thing. It creates an easier way to monitor, to use sensors, and to control different energy flows. But it can also be a problem when it comes to integrity and safety if you don't solve those things. We also have a changing demography where people get older. We have an aging population, but also in some areas where actually you have the opposite. There's certain age groups that grow a lot, and you don't have the equal share. So that is also one big challenge. I would like to move over to Sweden and show you some figures on the Swedish low energy buildings. Here you can see a graph, and you can see that about 2008 we started to build low energy buildings in Sweden. But it's mainly new houses. These bright yellow and the green here is A and B class new buildings, and when it comes to refurbishments, it's only a few up here. And you can see it's a quite big increase, so you would think that we are on our way, but if you compare that to the total amount of new houses, you can see that it's only these down here that are actually new, that are low energy houses. So it's only about 7% of all the new houses built are being built as low energy houses. And of course, for that, you also have the big part of the houses that are already built and that will be in the stock for another 50 years or so. This is one example when you built new houses. I don't know how many of you are familiar with passive houses. The picture here on the left is actually a plus energy house. They have both solar PV, solar thermal, wood pellet stove, burner. We have heat exchange from the sewage water and a lot of new technologies. But the passive house principle is actually from Germany from the beginning, but it's you have well insulated walls and roof. You use solar both for solar heating to heat water, but also directly in the winter that the architecture is made in a way that you can actually use the heat from the sun during the winter, but not in the summer, because then you need the shading, otherwise it gets too warm. You use heat exchangers, so the heat from the ventilation air from inside is used again. You preheat the fresh air that comes into the building, and you of course you use the heat from the persons living in the house and lights and stove and everything. But as I said, new building is one thing. Then you have all the possibility to make it right. The biggest challenge is of course the existing building stock, but also it has a big potential for reduced energy. So I'm just going to go through a few examples of what you can do in existing buildings to reduce energy. The first thing is to look over the insulation, the walls and the roof, and to see if it's possible to add insulation. And that can be done either by prefabricated building parts that you just add on the outside, or in other ways, site-specific ways of adding insulation. Preferably it's done on the outside instead of the inside. That reduces the risk for moist issues in the building. Change the windows and doors. Can also, if it's old windows, that can be a very effective way to reduce energy use. And you would like to have as low, not low, U value as possible. There are also actually ways to just upgrade currently windows. You can add an extra glass on the inside, and that can be a way. If you don't want to change the whole window, you can just add an extra to give it a better U value. To seal the building envelope to reduce heat leakage, especially around windows and doors, there can be leakage, and also in some other parts of the walls, and where there's cracks and where there's that can be a very effective way to reduce the heat to leak out of the building. What is really important if you do that is to make sure that the indoor environment and the ventilation is still adequate. You would probably need to add some sort of forced ventilation, because energy measures should never risk the indoor environment for the people using the buildings. Heat recovery systems is also an effective way, both from ventilation and from water. Ventilation systems, as I said, with the passive houses, there are techniques that you can use that uses the heat from the air inside to either change it to preheat the ventilation air that goes into the building, or to use it to make hot water for the building, and you do that with a heat pump. Always choose energy efficient installations, pumps, fans, elevators, LED lighting, all installations that you put into the house. Always make sure that they are high energy ratings, and not just use a standard. That can save a lot of energy over time, especially pumps and fans that never stops, that goes around the clock, because they have a lot of hours on them, and just a few watts lower can make a big difference. Household machines, it's not always that the people owning the house is in charge of buying them, but when you buy new computers, TV, refrigerator, washing machine, stove, and everything, make sure that you choose energy efficient ones. We talked about installation of the house itself, but you can also improve the installation of the technical installations, like the water and the ventilation pipes, so that you don't have energy losses on the wrong places within the building. And the same thing with if you have hot water tanks to store hot water in for heating or for showering, make sure that they are well insulated. Monitoring and control systems is also ways to reduce energy use, to make sure that the right amount of energy is directed to the part of the building that needs it, and also to only use the energy when it's needed. And there are actually, the sensors are being better and better and cheaper, so you can actually, it has happened quite a lot on this part in just the last 5 years. So it's actually easier now to monitor and get a good overview of the buildings. And I also brought the PV panels. I know that there are others going to talk about PV panels later, so I'm not going to talk so much about that. I have two things that is really important when it comes to reducing energy use, and that is LCC and LCA. And I will start with LCA, which is life cycle assessment, and that is the total impact, the total environmental impact that a product or service has throughout the entire life cycle. And that includes the raw materials, the enrichment of the raw materials, production, transport, use, phase, and the recycling and the waste. And I think this is a very good thing to have in mind when you do a investment or you choose something and compare different things, because one thing can seem to be a great environmental investment or installation or whatever, but if you look at through the whole life cycle, it can actually mean that it's better to choose something else. So bear in mind that you see on the whole, and also think in the circular way. So is it easy to recycle? Is it easy to use the material again, and not just things that you have to throw away, and it's really hard to recycle off when there breaks. The other part is life cycle cost, and that's a bit the same, but it's when it just comes to the cost, and that is the product or the service throughout the whole life cycle. And this can actually be very important. If I take the example of a pump, a water pump in a building that circulates the hot water, if you buy the cheapest one on the market because you don't want to spend too much money, and then you have a certain amount of energy used every hour that it is in operation, it will probably cost you more throughout the life cycle than if you would buy a bit more expensive pump in the beginning that has a lower cost per hour when you use it. So always look through the whole life cycle, and this also includes the investment. You should also add education, services, repairs, and of course depending on your investment interest and payback and everything. So make sure you add the whole life cycle in your calculation. This is to summarize a little bit about zero emission buildings. First part is to use energy efficient and robust building construction and services. Here you can see a picture of a typical Swedish way to build, with really airtight with the plastic and wooden framed insulation and some different insulation tubes. To have a healthy indoor environment is a key element to zero emission buildings. You cannot reduce the energy by just making the house airtight, and if you don't add the ventilation. So to have a sound indoor environment is crucial. One thing that you should always think about is how to do the building process and management and the quality assurance of that process. To make sure to follow up if you set goals, how to follow them up during the building process, and also when the building is in use, how to make sure that you actually get what you wanted in the first place, to have a good solution for that, for the building process and the management of the building. When it comes to the materials, as I said, always look at the whole life cycle, the raw materials and the process, and how to be able to recycle them when they're out of use. User behavior and the energy use in building, I will come back to that a bit later. And there's also a lot of different assessment tools and different ways to mark the buildings. I'm sure you've heard about the LEED and the BREEAM and a few others, but these are the ones that are most common in Sweden, and you can see a few of them I think that you can recognize, but they're all, of course, more different ones. I would like to give you an example of a project that we have done. This is a part of a city in outside of Gothenburg. It's called Kongahälla, and they wanted to see, is it possible to go from low energy to plus energy district? And this survey was actually done quite a few years ago, and now it's not. Now it's quite common to try to do this, but here they thought about this, how to use energy flows during the whole year by using solar, by using the excess heat from the grocery stores, from the cooling machines. You could add that to the district heating net and see how to move energy from different parts of the city to make a better use of the total energy system, and both heat and electricity. So this is an example of how you can try to get a whole block of buildings to be more energy positive. This is our research house in Borås, where we work. This is the main facility of RISE in the west of Sweden, and this house was built a few years ago by within a research project. We have one building in Borås and one in Varberg. In Borås we have 4 artificial occupants, and in Varberg we have a family of 5 real persons. They are single family prefabricated wooden framed villas, and they are designed to suit the Swedish market. So they are supposed to be energy efficient, but also cost effective and environmental friendly. And it was really important to have them also attractive on the market, so not too strange, so to speak. We made some improvements on the building envelope if you compare to ordinary Swedish houses. This is the roof insulation, where we had put some of the insulation on the outside of the wooden part of the roof. A lot of them, these parts are to reduce energy use, but also make it more moist safe. Since in Sweden we build a lot of wooden houses, the moist safety is really important for us. We have a ground source heat pump. Ground source heat pump providing heating and hot water. We have a ventilation unit with heat recovery that preheats the fresh air. There's floor heating, LED lighting, and solar PV that generates about 3,000 kilowatt hours every year. And what you can see here is if you compare to a standard house in Sweden, we managed to reduce the annual energy savings was as large as 73% compared to a standard house in Sweden. And the emissions 735 kilograms of CO2 equivalents. So, and 11 years payback time for this for these extra investment that the energy efficiency was. This house will probably be functional for at least 50 years. So after just 11 of them, it's paid back. Pretty much the same in Varberg. A little bit higher energy use than in Borås. So 80% lower energy use, but also 11 years payback period. And the lessons learned from this, it actually connects very well to my next part of the presentation, is that what we could see is that the user behavior was a key point in low energy houses, and they can actually have a big impact on energy use. There was one event where they changed a setting on the ventilation unit, and that made the energy use skyrocket for a few months before we realized what had happened. So the technique has to be really user friendly, and the users have a big impact on how the total energy use in the building ends up. And the house is now a full-scale test lab for us. So if you're ever in Borås, you are very welcome to come and visit if you want. Okay, so that was my first part with the reduce of energy use. Should we give the opportunity to ask some questions or comments?
Yes, if you have any questions to Lisa about this part, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. Or you could alternatively write your questions in the chat.
So I see that Danilo has risen his hand, so maybe Anna, you could unmute him.
Yes. Danilo, you should be able to talk now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so I was looking the energy performance indicator of that house, that it's about 35-40 kilowatt hours per square meter. That is very low. We have in Italy, on the coast, we have for new building now the limit is 25, 30, but in the mountain area is about 45.
Yeah.
Which is your limit for new building in Sweden now? The Swedish regulation doesn't count in the same way as the rest of Europe. We've had some issues about this within this project. So this is primary energy consumption, and that is 35. In Sweden, we use a bit of an other way, but we have 55 kilowatt hours. But it's not really comparable. But what you can say is, but wait, we should be able. Wait. If someone is fast to calculate, 35.2 is 73% lower than the Swedish regulations. I haven't done that math. Did you understand my answer? Can you repeat the last part? Sorry, because I didn't understand. So no, you don't have the primary energy consumption measured like this?
No, it's not presented like this in Sweden, so that's why I don't know it by heart. But if you calculate, I can do that later, and I will give you the answer. But it's
Okay.
35.2 kilowatt hours is the use for this house, and that is 73% lower than the Swedish regulations. So
if I did the math correctly, it's the regulation should be 44.5. Does that sound more or less okay?
It sounds a bit low, but maybe
Yeah, but we can
we can have a look into that and come back with an answer to you.
Okay. Thank you for the moment.
Any other questions? Then I think we will move on to the second part about behavior.
Yes, and I'm going to start to say that this is this presentation is mainly the work of one of my colleagues, Carolina Hiller, who's doing her PhD research within this area. So this is mainly her findings in here. The first part, when you talk about reduce energy use, I mean, who is the winner? We have both the building owner, who can do economic savings. They have, at least in Sweden, it's really important to be environmental and social responsibility. They can present a higher standard for the tenants, and they are mostly also have more satisfied tenants when they do energy efficient measures. But the tenants are also, of course, the winners, because that doing energy renovations actually raise awareness within the people living in the houses. It lowers the costs. You use less energy, and you also get better indoor comfort, especially when you do measures like changing windows and air tightening, because that gives a better indoor comfort. The behavior will have a bigger and bigger impact as time goes by. This is calculations done for Swedish houses. The current building stocks, you can see that it's the biggest part of the energy use comes from heating, and smaller parts from electricity and hot water. When you build new houses today, you can see that it's about this share, and the lower the energy gets for the heating, of course the electricity and the hot water is bigger of the parts. So when you've done a lot of the technical improvements that you can do, then the behavior part is the big that you can still do something with. And I would say that most actors, they start to do the technical parts. So they start by insulation, and they improve the energy systems and the heating and the ventilation and everything. And then you have the tenants that you need to somehow work with. This is one example. This is from her study. This is 16 pretty much identical houses that we have done monitoring and also questionnaires in. And what you can see is that the energy use varies a lot from, it's almost a factor 3 between the lowest and the highest energy use, with pretty much the same types of houses. And this is of course because depending on the tenants. And when it comes to the use of hot water, the difference is even higher. Then it varies from 50 liters per person per day up to 200, and this is hot water. So you can see here that it does matter, and it does vary a lot, even though the houses themselves and the technical installations and everything is the same in these 16 houses. And here you can see a curve on the variation from different months. This is 3 years, And for this specific, this is a single family house, and they have done a lot of improvements in their house, mostly technical, but that also brings an awareness and behavior change on how to use the house. So they've added a heat pump, they've changed the electricity radiators to hot water that can use the heat from the heat pump to heat the house. They've also done some renovation measures. So you can then see from the 2013 and down to the yellow, which is 2015, that they've actually managed to lower the energy quite a lot. And during these summer months, it's actually the renovation itself that makes the energy use still high, because they've used quite a lot of power tools powered by electricity. So does it really matter if you change your behavior? If you see or look into different estimations and how much is actually possible to save, it is as high as 20% of the energy use, and that can be quite a lot. And you can divide it into things that doesn't cost anything, or very little, very high cost, or that some stuff that you do more that means a bigger investment. Different measures that doesn't happen very often, that is rarely, and that is more often. So the things to look into when it comes to low cost or no cost at all, and that you don't do every day, it is to change to LED lights. If it's possible to lower the indoor temperature, only 1 degree lower temperature inside can save as much as 5% of the heating cost, depending on, of course, what type of energy you use. Improve the air tightness, and also when you install new water taps, you can choose the energy efficient ones. When it comes to a bit higher cost, then it's when you do investments like in white goods, refrigerators, TVs, computer, heating system, always make sure to choose energy efficiently. When it comes to things that you can change more often, then it's habits, lifestyles. Showers is one of those things that if you take shorter showers and less energy, also use low flow taps, it saves a lot. How to use washing machines, different how you dry your laundry is also one of those things that can save a lot. Always turn off the lights when you leave a room, and make sure that no equipment is on standby. I actually had a colleague that a few years ago calculated that if you could eliminate all standby losses, which is totally unnecessary energy use, you could close one of Sweden's nuclear reactors. So that is how much energy is used only on standby. That computers and TV and everything is not turned off completely, but also always has a low use of energy. So maybe not for a single family, it doesn't make that many euros per year, but for a whole country, when everyone does it, it's a big thing. Another thing that can help changing the behavior is to visualize energy. And this is one example from a Swedish energy company. They have an app that in which you can have a direct feedback on how your energy use is right now. You can see on these pictures down here how this little guy or whatever it is first very, very sad and not feeling very well, and then as you get better and better at saving energy, he gets happier and happier, and in the end really, really happy. And there are quite a few different examples of these in Sweden, but what we have seen doing research on this is that they can be fun for the first weeks or months, maybe for some, but you need some sort of more sustainable way to keep it at that, because you don't change your behavior long term just by adding one of those displays or an app. And we've actually done some projects on that. This is an example of a project that we have done together with nurseries for children, for the really young children, age 1 to 5. We've developed a tool, and the electricity thief, you can see him here, and he has a song, and he has there's a game on an iPad that the children can use, but there's also a material that the teachers use. And we've done monitoring on both before and after using this, both on short term and also on long term. And what we can see is that when we also add this guidance materials for the nursery teachers, how much more effective that was than to just use the app. So to also add ways to work with the people in the organization was the key to have the sustainable behavior in energy and reducing energy use. We also made one example of also behavior change in a work environment, and this is a project called Beyond This, where we started to look. This is a picture of a office where you can see all the screens are on, but there is no one sitting in front of them. And this is quite common that is actually quite a lot of energy is used when no one is when it's not needed, when it's not doing any good, so to speak. So that was what we wanted to target, because of course you need to use your computer, and of course you need to use your work environment, but the excess energy that is not needed. So we've created two gadgets, you can say. One of them is a screen where you can see how the energy measures is compared to different days and different parts of the buildings. And this is actually our lunchroom in Borås, where we have this big super graph that moves up and down when the energy use in the building varies. So there's also a very visual indicator of the energy use. But as I just said before, that is not enough. You cannot just only add these apps and things that people will change, because you also need to have the employees with you. So we arranged different workshops where they could discuss and try to see what they could do and what was easy to do and what was a bit harder and what they needed. And we also involved the all levels, all the way up to the manager of the office, to make sure that this was implemented all the way. So this was an example of these workshops where we worked with them. And doing this, we could also see that we got a lot better, greater energy saving than we did when only adding the visualization measures. So that was pretty much what I was going to say, but I will be happy to answer some more questions.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Are there any questions about the behavioral changes and Lisa's presentation? Please raise your hand or write your question in the chat function. Danilo?
Okay, a lot of questions from me.
Please go ahead.
Good.
About the smart meter, to understand which is the energy consumption inside the buildings, not only public but also private. It's very good for energy behavior for the citizen. Is it compulsory to have that smart meter in your country or not? And if you advise to all of the partners and all the local energy board to put this action, because I think it's very useful to save about 10% of energy consumption in buildings for electricity. So the first question, if it's compulsory in Sweden to have a smart meter inside the house, and the second, if you advise to all of them, of us, to have energy action in SECAP for this.
It's not compulsory to have smart metering. We have metering that it's on I think it's minute level, and you are able to get statistics on how your energy uses in very low intervals. But it's not. But I would say that if you have monitoring equipment or sensors to be able to see where is the energy used in the building, that is, I think that's a good way to start to see where is the biggest improvements able to be done. But it's not compulsory as it is right now in Sweden. What was your other question?
So the other question was if you advise to all of the local energy board to have an action in SECAP for this, to explain to people how is good the energy behavior, and with a small cost of smart meter, for instance, in Italy is about €100. It helps to have energy reduction. So the payback time is about 1 year if it's correctly used. So if you advise to put an action on this and
I think
for the group.
Yes, I think that would be a good. I'm not that of an expert of the smart metering, I have to say. So maybe I would need to ask this question to someone else. But if you say that they cost us less as you do, and that can be a way to actually improve the knowledge about the house and how to reduce the energy use by behavior, I think that could be a good measure to take.
And there's another question here. Please, you're now on mute. Yes.
Hi, thank you very much, Lisa, for this presentation. I just wanted to know if the information on the little children's game, the Energy Thief, if that was available for everyone, and if it's only in Swedish, or if you have a version in English that we can then reuse, and of course to teach kids from the start how to interact with energy is always a good way to get them thinking in the right way.
Yeah, yes. Unfortunately, it's only in Swedish, the material, but it is free, so it's, we could just distribute it, or if it's somehow possible to maybe translate parts of it within this project. I don't know that at all, but we can definitely make sure that you can get the material. But unfortunately, as it is right now, it's only in Swedish.
Okay, thank you.
Danilo, you had another question. Please go ahead. Are there any other questions? Danilo, I cannot unmute you anymore. I think it's because you muted yourself once. I can send an unmute request to you. You have one more question? No, you said no. Okay. Then thank you very much, Lisa. Then we will move on to our next topic, renewable energy technologies in municipalities, and welcome Dr. Konstantinos Karitas from CRES. I will make you a presenter within short. Please also remember to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, now we see your screen as well.
Okay. But it is in the wrong page. So 1 minute. I have to. There you are. So thanks for inviting me to participate as a speaker in this event. I am Dr. Konstantinos Karitsas from CRES. I'm the director for the Division of Renewable Energy Sources. And I'm also the head of the geothermal department. And I have acted for 6 years as the head of the solar department. First of all, I have to say that I'm going to be talking about RES technologies and systems that are available. I'm going to be talking about the ones that are available practically in every spot of the earth, because there are other RES technologies that depend on local characteristics. That is higher temperature geothermal, it is the wind, and also the hydro. So I'm going to be talking about the ones that are available for everybody in any point of the earth. And first of all, the geothermal heat pumps, which, okay, we know that in Sweden, for example, they are ubiquitous, there are so many. We also have solar thermal, which are mainly for domestic hot water, although we can use them for heating and cooling. Biomass pellet and biogas boilers when biomass is available. PVs on rooftops, and also hybrid systems which combine all of the RES technologies, creating zero energy buildings or zero energy neighborhoods. First of all, why to use RES technologies and systems in municipalities? We want to comply with the different directives for RES and energy efficiency in buildings to 2030, and also we look forward to the 2050 rules. Then RES are local, so we have an increased security in energy supply, and at the same time we have reductions of cost of energy, increase of local employment, and also we can create sustainable communities that use their own natural resources. Now, there are some, depending on the RES technologies, there are some pros and some cons, which I'm going to explain in brief. Geothermal heat pumps, they are available, and if desired 100% of the time. You can have them 24 hours, 7 days a week, all year long, if you need them. And really, there's no back system required. Although the practice is to always include some small backup system, but you don't really need it. There is a high initial cost, but there is a very small payback period because of the very, very high percentage of energy saving that happens and follows geothermal heat pumps. Solar thermal systems are available around 25% of the time because of, you don't have sun all the time, and always you need a backup system. Even for domestic hot water, if you don't have sun, you will need a way to heat your water, to have a bath, different from the solar if there's no sun. Biomass pellets, they are available most of the time, like geothermal, if you need them. It needs some storage, and sometimes, for example, in Greece, there could be, depending in the area, there could be some supply shortage. You don't find biomass or biomass pellets always at the same rate. The PVs on building roofs are again available around 20% of the time, depending on the sun, produces electricity, which is very important in our cases because you can combine them with geothermal heat pumps, solar thermal systems, or biomass and create near zero emission buildings or neighborhoods. I will give some examples from some projects that have been done in Greece. This is a good thing. Everything I'm going to be discussing now are from projects done in Greece. Some of them were paid by the EEA2, that is the EEA grants. And we have had geothermal heat pumps in administration buildings of municipalities, in educational buildings at schools, nurseries, universities, cultural and social activity buildings, elderly homes, health centers and hospitals, museums, sport halls, swimming pools, other municipal buildings. That means that really geothermal heat pumps can be employed and applied in all kinds of public municipal buildings. You can have, with the geothermal heat pump, with the same system, you can have heating, cooling, and domestic hot water, having savings of over 50% compared to natural gas, primary energy saving, and maybe around 60% compared to the petrol, to oil. The best perfect combination would be with solar thermal for the domestic hot water part and PV on rooftops, leading to really zero emission buildings, energy buildings. Here in the photos, you can see a school that is heated by geothermal heat pumps and a swimming pool belonging to a municipality in North Greece being heated by geothermal heat pump. Then the solar thermal, I have had here a design of how the system works, is usually used for domestic hot water, at least in most of the cases in municipalities, because in order to make heating and cooling with the solar thermal system, you need storage, which gets very expensive. So if you don't have a project that is funded at this moment for the storage part of solar thermal, it is not so economic, especially for municipalities. Then PVs on rooftops. Here we have from North Greece in Grevena, there's a whole hospital which is having electricity from this rooftop installation of PV. Again, biomass pellet boiler. I have this slide where you can see the initial principle of operation. Unfortunately, in Greece, municipalities don't use as much biomass pellet at this moment, but I know that in many other countries, like in Austria, etc., Sweden, of course, you could have biomass pellet boilers giving energy, heating to the buildings. Here, I'm going to be talking about the geothermal heat pump district heating system. It is a quite big geothermal district heating heat pump district heating system with 2 schools, 2 administration buildings, hospital, and also at the same time it is hybridized with a rooftop PVs on the hospital and solar thermal for domestic hot water in the administration buildings. Actually, this district heating system, which you could see the construction here of the geothermal heat pump, and this is the plan, is in Athens. It is in one suburb of Athens, Nea Ionia, meaning that you can really get inside with geothermal heat pumps and the hybridized system. You can really get inside the cities. It's not so difficult to get inside if you have a good plan. And here you can see that it's 2-3 kilometers district heating network within Athens. So nobody can say that you cannot really put it in a big city. Then another way to take advantage of RES could be transportation driven by PVs on rooftops. This is again in Athens. We have a system where you have a PV on a rooftop, and you have a charging system, electrical charging system for a municipal electrical bus of Athens, in Athens, and also for some motorcycles which are rented by municipality to the users. This is the PV panels on a hospital rooftop. And here is another quite big project in North Greece, where several buildings belonging to municipalities, story that is in Greek, but one is a nursery home, the one left up. The other is a nursery home, again in another little village. Underneath, there is a cultural center to the left, a small convent belonging to the church in the middle, and the elderly's home in Alexandroupolis in the right hand side at the edge. Here you have geothermal heat pumps mainly, being hybridized with biomass, with PV, and also with solar thermal. Finally, in the city of Grevena, which is in the north part of Greece, we have a system where you have combination of thermal solar, biomass, and also some PVs. So thanks for the attention. I was prepared for a 10-minute talk. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to Konstantinos? Please raise your hand and I will, yes. Danilo, you have to unmute yourself.
So can I make a
Yes.
Can I make a comment? That
Yes,
if there are no questions, it means that either the people know the technologies or there are many things to ask, so they cannot ask them all. So I hope it is that they know the technologies and they are working with RES in the municipalities and in their buildings.
Or if you have questions later on, please just send an email to us and we will forward it to you, if that's okay.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, now.
Okay.
Now we can hear you, Danilo.
Okay, sorry. About geothermal pump, I don't know if you listened before. It's not so common in our territory because of different difficulties of know-how of technician and installators and so on. But do you advise this installation just only for low temperature system, like for instance a swimming pool, or also for high temperature heating system, the one that requires 80 degree,
Okay.
like radiator?
Okay.
Do you advise for both or just only for
Yes.
low temperature systems?
Yes, I have.
Like for instance 40 degree.
Okay,
Like a swimming pool.
I can reply. First of all, you have to know, you are from Italy, I guess. Yes, Danilo?
Yes.
First of all, I want to tell you that there are many manufacturers of geothermal heat pumps in Italy, many, meaning that they are used not only as export from Italy to all other countries around Europe and in the world, very important this for you, and also obviously they use them in Italy. For example, one company is HiRef, and HiRef is developing now through some geothermal European projects a heat pump that can deliver almost 90 degrees. So in the commercial market, there are geothermal heat pumps delivering 78 to 80 degrees. Of course, the COP, which is a coefficient of performance at 80 degrees, is relatively low, but I still recommend, especially when you want to renovate an old building. Instead of changing all the installations in the building, you can use a high temperature heat pump, which exists, as I told you. For example, HiRef is constructing this, and others, many, Clima Veneta, for example. There are many companies from Italy. Actually, most of the heat pumps installed in Greece come from Italy. And we have around 1,500 heat pumps. So maybe 1,200 of them are from Italy. So yes, I think you have possibly a way to get deeper in the market. In some areas of Italy, in north part, they are already installing a lot of geothermal heat pumps in even in district heating systems. And also, it's not only for 35, 40 degrees, but as I said, you can go up to 70, 80 degrees. So I hope I replied to your question.
Yes, thank you. I was thinking exactly
Yes?
about this, that the efficiency with the low temperature is very high, and payback
Yes,
time is
yes, but I can tell you this, that at low temperature, the efficiency, the COP is above 5.5. When you go to 50, 60 degrees, this drops to 3.2, but still there is primary energy saving because, you know, the electricity, the average European electricity transformation rate is 2.5. So if you have 3.2, it means you're over 2.5. And if you go down up to 80 degrees, then you are at around 2.6, 2.5. So, okay, you don't burn oil in your place that you have the building, but somewhere else, somebody is making electricity with burning, for example, carbon, lignite, etc. At 90 degrees, you are with a COP of 2.2, 2.3. But this is going to be increased because of the research that is happening in Europe. Okay?
okay. Thank you. Very interesting. We are having
Danilo,
now
where are you from? From which institute?
from Sviluppo Marche, from Leader Partner Project.
Okay.
So living.
But I hope I answered to you. I hope I answered to your questions.
Yes, very well. And now it's in our territory, heat pump are improving a lot.
I think
Not
so.
the
I'm pretty
geothermal,
sure.
not a lot of geothermal one, but air by air exchange or air water heat pump, we are having a lot in this period.
Yes,
So
of
the
course.
improving, and I hope that we will have soon also a lot of geothermal one.
Yeah, and the good thing is that you have the manufacturers Italian, so you don't need to import. You know, this is very good for the cost of the heat pumps. You have Italian manufacturers, which are very specialized in this issue. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your answer.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? And please feel free to send us any questions if you have any questions you come up with afterwards. Thank you once more, Konstantinos, for this very good overview of renewable energy technologies.
Thank you.
I would like now I would like to invite Peppe Clausen from Mobil Samåkning to give us an idea of your initiative about mobile sharing or mobile car sharing. I will make you a presenter within short.
Thank you. Just confirm that everybody can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the opportunity for getting the opportunity to tell about our rideshare application for the Swedish countryside. Because mobility and transportation, that is quite a big chunk out of our energy consumption, and especially if you live on the countryside. Because one of the problems with the countryside is that it's too sparsely populated to get a good public transport service there. So most people need a car to be able to live on the countryside. And this is where the villagers in Toy, a small village outside of Växjö in Sweden, took their own initiative. I'm going to tell you a bit about the history behind Mobiel samopening and also what it is and how it could be implemented in other places. Those of you who are trying to view in full screen and still have this GoToWebinar little thingy on the screen, if you move it to the left-hand lower corner, it won't cover any of the text I have in my presentation. I hope. I haven't tested it completely, but it was something that I noted during the other presentations. I had to move around quite a lot. The village of Tolly in Växjö. Växjö is a medium-sized city in Swedish perspectives, and then we're talking about 60,000 inhabitants in the city itself. And the village of Tolly has about 500. It's 30 kilometers outside of the city, so it's not really something you can do by bicycle. There is no sustainable transportation in these kind of areas. Public transport is a school bus in the morning that takes students to the school and takes them back early in the afternoon, and it's not an option for commuters to use this bus because it returns too early. So the villagers themselves took the initiative, and it was an EU project, a LEADER project in 2011. Just a couple of people at the kitchen table who made this rideshare platform themselves. And it's not the only initiative that has been taken on when it comes to rideshare applications. But we're still alive. So we have now 7 years of experience with rideshare in the countryside, and it turns out that this is pretty unique all over Europe. Most of the rideshare applications aim at long distance travel between cities, and we are operating with everyday travel. So after the launch of our platform in Tolly, we got a lot of phone calls from other villages who wanted to have the same platform. So this is when the group working with the original platform started a company. So since then we have launched a new version. I'm going to tell you a bit more about the technology behind it. It's quite simple, but I'm going to tell a bit more about it. We have also exported it to the Netherlands, which was quite a challenge because it's very densely populated, so it's not the same. It has not the same requirements as we have over here in Sweden. And we took the whole idea of a rideshare platform to a business incubator, which is quite an unusual step. What is Mobiel samopening as a rideshare application? Well, over here in Sweden, we are very good at making up new words by putting together two existing words. So in this case, Mobiel samopening. Mobiel, it's not only about mobility, but it's also about a mobile telephone. And samopening is riding together. So in one word, we have got the entire concept. It is an adaptable website which functions without any problems on tablets and mobile phones. And the way we build it is that it can be used as a planning tool. So we are showing travelers information about rideshare options and public transport if it is available. So you get the whole mix that is available if you don't want to drive the car yourself. It's also a brokering service, so we build in functionality so that passengers and drivers can connect, mainly through booking. So it's not only that we have the information, but you can also book travels with drivers who have opened their cars for rideshare. And this is where we use SMS text messages for confirming a rideshare. It's one of the security features that we build in, that it's not only an internet platform, but we are using SMS as a fail-safe device. We also built in a payment system, which was quite controversial at the time, and I still get a lot of questions about it when I present our platform over here in Sweden. But we think that with a payment system in place, you get rid of all the hassle of talking about costs or sharing costs. It's just a single fare system, so everybody pays the same amount per kilometer. And you can talk about the weather or ice hockey or anything else that you want to talk about when you are in the car. That's the technology. It's quite simple because we wanted to make it available for as many people as possible. So even if you have a very old telephone with the buttons on it, and then you still are able to use our rideshare application. That was quite important in 2011 when we started. It's not that important anymore, but we still want to keep it as simple as possible. Besides the technology, we have an implementation process. It's not an existing option at the moment to do rideshare on the countryside because people find it difficult to find each other. So it's not in the mindset of people that rideshare is an option for them. So we really need to work on marketing, show the advantages, getting people involved in this. And this implementation process is very important. It's even more important than the technology behind it, because leaving the car at home and starting to travel by rideshare, it's behavioral change. And I'm not the first one today to say that. It's quite a difficult thing to achieve. So we are not just supplying the technology, we're also supplying a process to get going. This is basically how it works. So people register as users within their own villages. So they are in their own geographical circle. It's a built-in security that we have carved up the countryside in small bits where people feel secure enough to start traveling with each other. This is the biggest difference with all the other rideshare applications that are available, who are open to everybody. As a driver, you just enter your journeys, because the main thing that we are doing is that we are making all those empty car seats that are driving on our roads, we are making them available for passengers. That's also what makes this legal in Sweden. It's not that you order your travel as a passenger, but you can drive along with someone who is going to drive anyway. And that's a very important distinction in Swedish law. As a passenger, you can find a fitting opportunity to share a ride, to book a ride with a driver, because we have sorted them by destination. So that could be a city or another village. And we have identified stops. So that is about the same way public transport works with their destinations and bus stops. And we have taken this idea to a rideshare application because it is something people can relate to quite easily. If you as a passenger book a ride, then the platform sends an SMS text message to the driver, and he or she has to confirm this booking. So as a driver, you also have the flexibility to change your plans. You are not obliged to take any booking you get. And this freedom, this flexibility is really important in our rideshare platform, because people nowadays are much more flexible compared to the rideshare culture from the 1970s and 1980s, when there were 4 people driving to the same factory every day who are working at the same time. Society today doesn't work the same way anymore. We have flexible working hours, and we are also traveling for other purposes than just work, like practice or a hockey game. This is also an opportunity to share a ride with your neighbor. The advantages of ride sharing, well, they are quite obvious, but when we asked our users in some of our villages, then the outcome still was a bit unexpected. We have made the car to a meeting place on the countryside. If you don't have children at school, if there still is a school left, but it's not easy to meet other people if you're living on the countryside. And we made this car to a meeting place. People talk about everything, and we have seen that new initiatives have been started in the car. New projects have been started, new businesses have started, music evenings, so booking artists. A whole lot of creativity has opened up because people are going to meet each other. So sharing a ride and talking with each other for about 15 or 20 minutes, it really has helped to build the social fabric on the countryside. This is valued most by our users. Of course, we have increased mobility options because suddenly it is possible to leave the car at home. People are very creative when it comes to mobility options. So if your children have to go to football practice and they can't go by bike because it's too far, it's now much easier to arrange a rideshare with other parents who have the same challenge. So all of a sudden, you don't have to drive yourself anymore, which gives increased possibilities. We also have seen that people who are working as self-employed owners, they have started to organize happy hour meetings on Friday afternoon, because suddenly they can go to town and come back on a Friday afternoon, which was impossible before. Saving money, always nice, especially in if you live in this part of Sweden. We have calculated that if you only take 1 trip a week through rideshare, then you can save between 200 and 600 euros a year, both as a passenger but also as a driver. So you don't have to change your lifestyle completely to save money. Every rideshare is an option to save money. And this is actually where we started. We wanted to do something for the environment. And sure, this is a feel-good moment for everybody involved, but it's not the main reason why people are involved in a rideshare platform. It's pretty unique that all of these advantages, social, economic, and environmental advantages, happen at the same time. So this is really sustainable transportation. But it's not the driving force for most people. And the final result is that we are making the countryside more attractive to be. So people can move to the countryside even if they don't want to drive their car all day, or people can stay at the countryside. They don't have to move to the city if their children grow up and want to participate in city life as well. What have we learned? Well, quite a lot, and I don't know how much time I have left, but one of the main things is that we have plenty of resources over here in Sweden. Most people have a car and drive them on their own. So these empty seats available. This is typical for Sweden, and it might be completely different in other areas in Europe. Most people are not interested in rideshare at all. Most people are quite happy with driving on their own with the music quite loud and really want to have this 20 minutes on their own between job and home. We don't aim at them at all. Maybe later, but at the moment it's not really important to try to convince them. If they're happy, they're happy. We have identified 5 target groups that are open to new transportation options, and we can target them quite directly. Our platforms work best in areas with between 400, 500 to 2,000 inhabitants, and not too large geographically speaking, and not too far from an urban settlement, because if it's really countryside without any urban settlement, then there is not enough transportation to match passengers with drivers. And most important, people who are using our service want to have other transportation services they can book through our system as well. And this is where we try to develop our rideshare platform into in the near future, that is mobility as a service for the countryside. So not only rideshare, but also being able to borrow your neighbor's car, or to book a taxi, or to buy a ticket for the bus, all through the same platform. And this is a process we are right in the middle of, and most mobility as a service developments happen in the city, and we are one of the few who try to bring it to the countryside, because our vision is that this is needed most on the countryside. There are no alternatives there. If you live in the city, you can take a bike, you can take the bus, but not on the countryside. We have to start somewhere. That is our contribution to energy solutions, energy efficiency on the countryside, and we target mobility as the main challenge for those people who choose or have to live on the countryside. Well, thanks for the time, and if there are any questions, feel free to ask them.
Thank you very much, Peppe, for this very interesting presentation of your grassroots initiative around mobility. Are there any questions? Please raise your hand and I will unmute you, or write your question in the chat. There seems to be no questions.
Everything is crystal clear. Well, that's nice.
But if you come up with questions afterwards, please send them to us and we will forward them.
Yes, I will be happy to answer any questions. It's compared to the other presentations, it's a totally different topic, and it's also a niche working on the countryside. So it's very well possible that you will have a question later on. So.
Thank you very much. Then last but not least, I would like to invite Jessica Wadin from Lund University to present innovative financial solutions. And I think it's about PV and business models for PV. I will just make her presenter. And Kerstin, I think Jessica is sitting together with you. Please don't forget to unmute yourself.
Good. Okay, now
Now we can hear you and see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Jessica Lagerstedt Wadin. I'm a senior lecturer and researcher at Lund University, working on solar energy, residential solar energy, and business model innovations. As you all know, the energy sector stands for about 25% of greenhouse gases emissions, and it's of great importance to shift to renewable energies. And I see business models as an important link between an idea or sustainable idea to the market. And thereby, it's important to study business models to scale up sustainable solutions. Hur funkar den här? Sorry, it's okay, now it's working. So the outline of my presentation, I will give you an overview of the global solar energy market. Then I'll talk a little bit about what is a business model. And
just a second. Now you're not in presentation mode anymore.
it's not in presentation mode.
Now we see just the ordinary view of PowerPoint.
Okay, 1 second. Thank you. Can you see it now?
No,
Says-
it's still,
no, it still
doesn't
doesn't work.
But if you close down and open it once more, I think it's
Well, 1 second, you can talk to Justin.
Okay, so what do you see now?
just the PowerPoint as it is, not in presentation mode. So you should click there on presentation mode. Yeah,
And
now
now?
it's the
Okay.
presentation mode. Yeah,
Okay, great.
perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry for that. So I will give an overview of the global solar energy market. What is a business model? So what can it be used for? I'll also give you some examples. And then I will talk a little bit about the case that we studied of a successful business model traveling from California into the Netherlands and what happened. And then finally, I will talk a little bit about what's going on in Sweden. Nu funkar inte den där.
Now it works.
Now it works. Okay, so there's been an exponential increase in installed capacity globally. Last year, it was more than 26% increase globally. And also the price has been falling very, very fast and much faster than people ever thought they would be. So the installations globally has been skyrocketing. And initially, the deployment's been dependent on financial supporting schemes. For example, feed-in tariffs in Germany, basically when you get money for the surplus that you send out to the grid again, or net metering, which we find in California and the Netherlands, meaning that you can, what you provide or what the surplus you send out on the grid, you can use again for free, basically, the same amount on a yearly basis. And also the PV is already cheaper than fossil electricity, fossil-based electricity around the world, both compared to new built and old production sites like coal and gas. Okay, so here you can see the installed capacity, cumulative installed capacity in Europe. So we have Germany, but also Italy and Spain, France, but we also find Greece and the UK in here, not Sweden though. And if we look at the PV trends on a global basis, we see huge solar parks being installed all over the world. In India, it's huge. In Chile, in the US. Yesterday, I read a news about an installation in Egypt, and one of the reasons was also to get away from the oil dependence of other countries, so being more independent of other countries, basically. But also, we can see empowering of the people, so small scale installations in South Africa, Nicaragua, India, in many places around the world, but people go together and install PV on a small scale, which could also be seen as a part of being democratic in a way, where you can influence your own electricity production. But also we see an increase in PV and storage, a lot of technology development in here, but it's still expensive though. And this could also be part of this independence from both other countries, but also large enterprises or large utilities. So let's take a look at business models. So what is a business model? I would say, or I use it as a mental lens of how firms do business. Basically, how they create value for the customers, how they deliver the value for the customers, but also how they capture that value, basically making money out of what they've offered their customers. So we have the value creation, which is for the customer. How do we make this value for the customer? And yeah, in terms of their interests and needs and wants. The customer interface relates to the interaction with the customers. So what kind of communication channels, the relationship with the customers, etc. And the business structure is related to the organization, so how you organize in order to deliver that value to the customer. And of course, the revenue model, how do you make the money? So let's have a look at the very simple example, so you know what I mean, of an offer of a hamburger. So I was at the airport in Trondheim finding this offer of a hamburger. Very simple offer. There were no real options though, so this is what I was offered, the easy burger with the French fries. And in terms of the interface, I found this guy very nice and friendly, and very flexible. I didn't want any ketchup, and he said, okay, we fixed that, and good service. And in terms of business structure, so the way they organize their delivery, they bake their own bread, they bought the hamburgers, and then you can think about, okay, should we deliver it as a buffet or a package? In this case, it was packaged like this. And of course, how do we make the money in the different step in the way we organize ourselves and deliver value? And we know that business models can rapidly change the game in different industries. Well-known examples you find in the music industry, for example. Once time we used to buy records, but nowadays it's more likely that you buy your music from Spotify or other music services through an app or something like that. So that changed the whole industry in terms of how they deliver that music and how they organize themselves to deliver the music, and also how they get paid. You might have heard of this freemium, where you can get started and have it for free basically, but then you also get the advertisements, etc., from other companies. So that's the way they get the money. And then you can buy a more advanced package where you can get the music directly, whatever you want. And also within the taxi services, you probably heard about Uber, and we have, well, both in Germany and Sweden, we have a service more like pay as you go. So basically you have an agreement where you can, get a car, get access to a car, you open it with an app, and then you go, and then you put it anywhere, so somebody else can use it. Okay, so for business models for solar PV, first of all, we have the host-owned model, a plug-and-play model, basically where you buy the equipment and become a prosumer, we say. So basically, you're both a producer of electricity and a consumer of electricity, so you can sell it back to the grid. And we also have some non-purchase offers, like solar as a service or storage as a service. Sometimes we talk about third-party ownership, which is like a leasing or rental contract when somebody else owns the equipment. And we have the power purchase agreement, which is about when it's a contract between a buyer and a seller, and when the buyer, that contract is basically an agreement where you committed to buy all the electricity produced from the system at a arranged price. And then we've seen some cross sales offers, which is also non-PV companies, for example, prefabricated houses where you buy a package, which is fairly common in Japan. And then we have also community-based business model, which basically you pool and share the resources, allowing you to invest based on the financial capacity. So even if you don't have a lot of money, you can still be part of it. And also this model, I haven't studied it in detail, but I know a few examples in the UK. And I can also send you a link about that if you're interested. And we also see crowdfunding. So basically where you invest a little bit in a park, for example, in a solar park. So now we'll go into the case that we've been studying of a third-party ownership model going from California to the Netherlands. So we'll have a look at what characterized this business model. So first of all, the value proposition, what they offer the customer is very, very simple, turnkey solutions with no hassle, and they directly save money on the energy bill. So and no upfront cost. So it's leasing. It's basically, you wouldn't say no to that offer. And in terms of the customer interface, they're very professional, very service-oriented experience for the customer. But they also use IT and remote sales processes, which means that they don't have to go out to the customers all the time. And also what we call lead generators, so they can pull up with other companies or partner with other companies that can find potential customers at a bigger store, for example. And then in terms of the business structure, they've been using an ICT-based platform for, the customer acquisitions, basically when you get it all the way through the sales process and get the contracts, but also for quotes and design of the systems. And they're very standardized and both in the design and sales. So they have different groups of people working very dedicated on what they're doing. And also they had to partner with investors, of course, to get funding for this third party offering. So basically the investors own the systems, and installers to do the networks, of course. And this model, the revenue model in this one is based on the revenues per kilowatt hour or the monthly fee. So basically they have to build a lot of contracts, long-term contracts in this case for 20 years, and build portfolios which they can sell to different kind of investors. And this business model has been so successful. In 2014, it was more than 70% of the market share in California. And there was a company in the Netherlands which related to this company we studied in California, said, "Oh yeah, we would like to copy this. It's so successful." So what they did, well, they said it's so successful, but we want to copy it, but we don't want to copy the sales process. It's way too American, and it wouldn't work in Europe. So what they did, they said, okay, let's start with the ICT platforms and the software tools for the customer acquisition and design and quotes, etc. And where they actually found out it was much harder. They thought it would be easy to do this. It's kind of the hard or technical stuff that can be easily copied, but they found out that it was very difficult and very costly. So the translation from costs and coding, etc. And it turned out they had to start from the beginning. And then actually they partnered with a green utility, and so they had the software tools in place, and they partnered with a green utility. They said, sorry, I should still be here. That also had a leasing offer. They said, okay, let's try it. Let's go out there, and did a customer survey with this green utility. And what they found was that people in the Netherlands, they didn't want to lease. Probably one of the reasons is that the roofs are so small, so it was not that expensive. And people wanted to own their equipment, so they had to change this leasing offer to a sales offer instead. And in terms of, so they had the offer and they had these tools in place. They want to get customers, right? So, but there were no customers. So, and what they did was to actually contact, or one of the founders had a personal contact with a celebrity person in the Netherlands who actually did a commercial on the front page of a newspaper in the Netherlands, and it created such an interest that they got more than 2,000 leads into the company, which they actually couldn't handle. So basically, there were two people sitting there in the backyard trying to figure out what to do. And at the time, let's see. So yeah, sorry. So basically, when they changed this sales offer, they also had to change the revenue model, obviously, to system sold. And also the investors were out. And in terms of the customer interface, they said, okay, they must do something right in California. And there was a new CEO who came in, and they decided to go back to California and actually copy the way they actually did that sales process, the one that they denied in the beginning. So it was very professional and very, what to say, American customer service. And finally, they were very successful in this journey. So what we learned from this is that the business model is very dependent on the local context. One thing that seems to be very successful in one place is very hard to copy, depending on the culture and the policies, of course. Even though the technology development might be global, but also in terms of pricing of equipment and the price of electricity. So the different business model components obviously need to fit the new business or the local business environment. But what we also saw in this case was that the strong will to actually and the perseverance to allow experimentation and learn from mistakes was there. So they tried all the time and continue, but also the partnership and from the partnerships where they could learn and share costs. And in this case, we also found champions who actually created this culture to actually allow experimentation. And allow for learning from mistakes and the engagement to willingness to succeed, which was one of the key factors. But also that there's a need to understand and see this business model as a whole. So we can analyze the parts separately, but we need to understand the whole thing. And what I also believe is very important here is that the customer sensitivity to build the trust locally. So if we go to Sweden then, we have a number of big utilities in Sweden. There are some entrepreneurial firms within the PV sector as well, but mainly we have the big utilities producing electricity, which we trust and rely on. But if we look at the installed capacity in Sweden, we can see that from 2015 to 2016, it more than doubled. And I think that in 2017, it doubled again, which is very, very good. But if we look at other countries and compare with other countries, we sometimes talk about diffusion, which means the total installed capacity per 1,000 people. So meaning that we can compare the countries or the installed capacity by country, even though we have different number of people. And we see Germany in here, but we also see far, far, far behind, we see Sweden, not even in the takeoff mode. And meaning also that the Swedish market is very immature. Sometimes we talk about this person, or I know that most of the customers is a almost retiring man who is very into technology or engineering, tech savvy, who has the money and maybe some environmental interest for the future, for the future generations of the grandkids. So you would expect Sweden to be very successful in this. And so what we did was to contact the 30 biggest utilities in Sweden offering PV, finding out that there was only half of them who actually had a PV offer. And basically main part of that half, you basically have to do the work yourself. So measure up your roof and take photos and all the details about technical installations in your home, etc. So meaning if we want to expand, we also need to understand, more average customers who might not be tech savvy, and why people do the things they do. So, and well, this is a picture that I got. This is my roof, and the question I was asked as a customer was, do you want 7 or 10 kilowatt installation? Which I believe they should answer. So there's some way to go still in Sweden. So by that, I also want to say that I think it's important to think small scale with a personal contact and service, and the entrepreneurial mindset within this field I've seen to be very successful, but also finding alternative solutions for financing systems. So for example, going to investors and convince them about the low risk of actually investing in PV, but also crowdfunding and this community sharing, energy community sharing example that I mentioned. So thank you.
Thank
Hello.
you very much, Jessica.
Okay.
Are there any questions to Jessica and her presentation about the business models? Please raise your hand or write your question in the chat. There seems to be no questions. Once again, thanks a lot for your interesting presentation. And thanks to all the attendees to attend today's webinar on energy solution measures. And I hope you got some inspiration and new ideas for the action plans. Thank you very much. And next week on Tuesday at 9 o'clock, the 19th of June, there will be the second SECAP walkthrough. So we will dive more into the SECAP formulation or update. Thank you very much for today. Have a nice day. Bye.